Hello, welcome to Post-Colonial Space. I'm Masood Raja, and I'm currently in Pakistan. So today I'll briefly talk about the three talks that I gave today at National University of Modern Languages, Islamabad, primarily to scholars and faculty members from universities from Baltistan, from Khuzdar, from parts of Sindh, and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. And for me, it was a great learning experience because not only did the people ask the most interesting questions, they taught me about so many of particular aspects of their own subcultures of Pakistan. So I would briefly talk about the three talks that I gave today. The first one was on critical pedagogy. The second one was about how to use literature for social change. And the third talk was slightly related, but it was all about how to study and teach post-colonial studies. And to my surprise, these three happen to be my sort of areas of expertise. And if you look at the channel, all these three branches of humanistic knowledge and praxis, I have materials on it. So I'm not going to explain each one of these topics. I'm just going to pick up a couple of questions that were raised and about which we had some really productive exchanges. And I thought I should record it here to share it with you, but also as a public record of how productive these exchanges can be. So during my talk about literature for social change, there was a wonderful exchange between me and a couple of participants about how best to change the schemas with literary texts, with the help of literary texts, of our students and our brains to become more empathetic human beings. And of course, I was using the work of my former colleague and dear friend, Mark Bracher, on whose work I have quite a few videos from his Insights in Radical Pedagogy, his book. And the point that he makes is, and I'm going to give it very succinctly here, is that according to some really wonderful psychological research, it is kind of understood that our biggest need as human beings are our identity needs. Now, this comes from, of course, Axel Honneth and others as well, that we need recognition. But acknowledging that our students' biggest need is the need for the acknowledgement of their identities. And that we all, at any given space and time, are constantly guarding our identity. We want to protect it. We have a certain idea of who we are. I'm not going to go into the details of why do we have that idea, but let's just assume that we guard our identity. That's what causes the anxiety in the world. If we feel flustered, if we feel alone, if we feel challenged, it sends our sense of ourselves into crisis. So a consequence of this understanding is that when we do progressive teaching in a classroom, and let's assume there is a student who doesn't agree with me, maybe they are conservative. So no amount of our sermonizing is going to open a space in their minds to hear us out, because their energies are being spent on protecting what they think is sacred, what they think is their identity. And the knowledge and the way you are presenting it is threatening to that identity. It's not even about dislikes or unlikes. It's almost an unconscious response. And so as a result, when they feel that their identities are threatened, they will close you off. And then maybe They will challenge you more and more. And the challenge is because what you are saying hits at the core of their idea of self. So then the question that Mark Bracher poses and tries to answer is, how do we reach these students? Obviously, more liberal lectures are not going to do that. If their identities keep becoming constricted and constricted, chances are then they will psychologically release it in aggression, in self-harm, or so many other things. So the idea that Mark proposes, and it's not just his research, it comes from Erik Erikson as well and his work, is that we should develop a mode of reading which is identity enhancing, which enables our students to enlarge their identities, right? Because if we can do that, then they can hear you out. They can have differing points of view, but they can still empathize with you and the people in the world. And literature can do that because literature, by and large, gives us living, breathing characters who go through the struggles of life, to whom things happen, or who do things in the story. So we already have a powerful medium. But what we are trying to do is not to convince our students that everything in the text is right, or that they need to know everything in the text. But we use the text as a tool for them to discover or at least display their feelings. And there are various exercises that Mark Bracher proposes, but one of them could be, it doesn't matter what a person, what your student's ethnicity or prejudices or politics is, if there is a character being victimized in the novel, right? The leading questions are about, okay, what do you think is happening? That's a question of fact. They will tell you, okay, this person is being beaten by this person. And you don't ask for reasons or rationals, you ask for feelings. So how does it make you feel? So obviously, you're not asked that student to evaluate that instance in the novel. You have pointed it to their feelings. If some unjust act is happening, chances are, they will say, well, this makes me feel bad about this character who's being abused. If they are not sincerely attempting it, they will at least perform an empathetic identity to do well in class, right? But in both the cases, what you have done is you have invoked the frame, the schema in their brain, which makes information intelligible and assigns ethical value to it. They have now performed an empathetic act of speech, right? In the process of doing that, they have thought and spoken something that they might have never previously done. And that has then opened a space in their mind to think empathetically about someone about whom they could have had gender or racial prejudice, maybe just to get a good grade in your class. But since they have said it, since they have done it, and you have not placed any judgment on it, somehow the repertoire of their thinking process has slightly enhanced. Now, if we do it repeatedly without becoming pedantic by engaging our students with the text, so the research shows that through repeatability and constantly talking in empathetic terms about characters in a novel, they might even look different, might be from a different religion and race. Eventually, the schemas in the brains of people who are practicing this will shift. Now remember, we're not trying to brainwash them. We are enabling them to develop pro-social identities, an enhanced idea of self that can sustain contradictory narrative. And the hope at the end is that through this process, at least it will start a process of change, a shift that they themselves will accomplish. But you have just given them some experience of it in a class. And that's one way of thinking about our own pedagogy, right? Most of us who are progressive, we go in our classroom with our agenda and we are forcing our politics on our students. The idea is that does not work. It only works with students who are already on your side. But if we focus on the human aspects of a story and talk about empathy and care, even when the students performatively respond like that, what we are opening a space is that for the students, we are saying your opinion is sought, it's valued. And in the process, the anxiety about their identity that they might have been having in a liberal classroom eases. And when that eases, they are more productive. They are more actively engaged in a discussion. And eventually, you never know, it might, in the long run, make them think the world differently. So that's what we talked about in today's class. And we had really interesting back and forth because one of the biggest questions that was posed was, well, how are we sure it's going to happen? And how long would it take? And obviously, I have no answer to that. I'm not sure how long would it take. But what I posed as a counter argument was that we have two possibilities. We keep doing what we're doing and we know it causes harm and it's not effective. Or we try to tweak what I just talked about, what Mark Bracher teaches about, to our particular environment and see if it works. If it works, then we have accomplished something and we have figured out a mode of teaching that enables us to help our students become more empathetic, generous, and caring people. If it is unsuccessful, at least we're not doing any harm to their identities. And if it fails, that's okay too, because that means we're still at the place where we started. But not attempting to do anything like this, in my humble opinion, would be an abdication of our responsibility as teachers, as co-learners with our students. So we talked about a lot of things today, but this is what that stood out to me, the question of pedagogy and the question of identity and its fragility and how to enable teaching environments in which the students feel included. They feel that they are participants and that the teaching environment creates a space for them to be able to enhance and enlarge their sense of self. And when that happens, I can promise you, they will see the world differently. So that's it today from my travels in Pakistan. I'm, in Islamabad, which is in Port-au-Har, so I am in the land of my ancestors. I'm happy to meet new friends and see all my old friends. And I'm grateful to National University of Modern Languages, Islamabad, for inviting me to have these conversations with these scholars and participants. I'll come back maybe with some more new experiences. I hope you enjoyed it, or if you have any questions, please feel free to post a comment. Also explore other videos on pedagogy, critical pedagogy, or on Mark Bracher's work. You could benefit from them. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much. Please stay safe, be generous and kind to others, and I will now see you next time. Until then, peace and love.